Hello everyone, this is Aegon of Astora, and welcome back to my caster build playthrough of Dark Souls Remastered. This is episode number 13, being recorded on Monday the 16th of July. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, whenever it is you find yourself watching this. That was really close. Our first death of the episode was almost a death to gravity in the middle of the greeting because I hit my controller when I didn't intend to. So this is going to be very interesting, I think, because in the previous episode, or at least on the previous live stream, is when I realized that, or I remembered that you can't actually use the skull lantern for light in your right hand, only in your left hand. So, yeah. And so we have a friend here who I would love to include in the thumbnail for the episode. But correct me if I'm wrong, because I may very well be wrong about this, but I feel like the draw distance, like they've accentuated the dark. Whoa, that's actually really creepy. We should just make that the thumbnail for the episode. Just Patches, his face sort of in the darkness. I don't feel like the Tomb of the Giants was this dark in the original. He looks so concerned. Like, I wonder how those clerics. I wonder how. First I was too deep, and then I was like, no, I need to go higher, and then it went way too high. Yeah, he's just interesting all around. He definitely looks like he's plotting something. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of the chat for a second here, because this will be one of the potential thumbnails for the episode. He looks like we can trust him, yeah. I'd be concerned if I saw Sweet D looming out of the darkness. Yeah, that's probably what he's reacting to. Who is this over here? Again, totally overcorrected. And when you have a light source, he looks like an angel. Which, yeah, probably not that far off.
Good day. Good day. You look reasonably sane. What are you doing in the catacombs? Are you a cleric or something?
So this is a question that he's originally programmed to ask you in the catacombs. But it's curious that if you don't encounter him in the catacombs before you trigger the move of himself, Rhea, Vince and Nico to the Tomb of the Giants, that his dialogue isn't updated to say, what are you doing in the Tomb of the Giants? Are you a cleric or something? Like, maybe he doesn't know it's the Tomb of the Giants and he thinks it's just an extension of the catacombs. But, yeah. Fun lore fact, Patches is a self-aware AI put in all FromSoft games to patch any bug fixes. So, if you answer yes, that changes this encounter such, it doesn't only just change his dialogue, but it changes it such that when you make your way out of the pit that he's about to thrust us into, he attacks us on sight when we get back up top. Whereas if you say you're not a cleric, which is what we're going to do because I can't stand having Patches mad at me, I don't know how to quit him, you know, all that stuff, then he becomes a merchant back at Firelink. And even though his prices are rather exorbitant on a few of the items that he sells, this is the option we're going to go for just because, again, I can't quit Patches.
No? No? Really? Really? Then I'd have no qualms telling you. There's a fine stash of treasure right down that hole. I found it first. But, well, we're friends now. So I'll split it with you. In any case, have a look. It'll shimmer you blind.
Well, thank you, Patches. That is so very kind of you. I'm so glad we became friends. Let's have a wait.
This is what I do, my friend. The trinkets I'll be stripping off your corpse, that's the real treasure.
Not very kind. Not very kind, Patches. So presumably these are the souls of all the people that he's pushed down here. And we now have 3 skull lanterns, which... I was about to say it's handy, but really no point in us having 3 skull lanterns. And we have... somewhere around here. Oh, what the... oh, there she is. What happened, friend? You're a little bit stuck there. So we have another instance of damseling here. Hello.
You're no hollow, are you? Thank goodness. Please be careful. There are 2 fierce hollows not far from here. They were once brave knights, my former escorts. Who would let such strong spirits be hollowed so? Heavens, is there nothing at all to be done?
Well, I could always pray to the god of Sweet D, and we'll take care of it. And you can see he's pretty hollowed. Oh.
You banished those 2 hollows, did you? It pains me to think of the trouble my failings have caused. I am certain that both Vince and Nico are grateful to you. Thank you so very much. Here, these belonged to them. You deserve them more than I.
Yeah, that's a good question, Twiggy. My understanding of it anyway is that I think it's a PR thing. Because, Theomany, I think the question that Twiggy's asking, or at least one of the things that I've been wondering is, why do they need her specifically to get the right to kindling? Why couldn't it just be Vince and Nico or Petrus? And maybe it's a PR thing because my recollection of it anyway is that Rhea is the daughter of someone who's very rich and powerful. And so whereas any other undead becomes undead, they just sort of send them to the asylum. In Rhea's case, it would seem that, they wanted her becoming undead to become some sort of religious myth or legend, something that people talked about. in positive terms. Much like Anastasia and later Irina, a maiden on her way to becoming a firekeeper. Pierre de whom the skeletons? Well, seemingly there's a world left somewhere in this game. Ostensibly, Rhea was to become a firekeeper herself and needed the rite of kindling. Yeah, see, that would make sense. But, and that's why, Twiggy, I'm suggesting that maybe it's a PR thing, because... And another thing that I've asked in the past about the rite of kindling that doesn't really make sense to me, like, there are ways in which I can make sense of it, but I'm not sure if in absolute terms it can be made sense of. And that is, they're down here. So did they go too far? Though if you ask me, it was just to get rid of someone who was a high-ranking woman out of Thorolund because undead are not a good thing to have for the Way of White. We've already killed Pinwheel. We have the Rite of Kindling, the description of which we didn't read in the previous episode, so let's do that now. This secret rite allows bonfires to be bolstered further with kindling, so that even more Estus can be collected. Kindling was a sacred rite passed down among clerics, but all undead can imitate the process in the same manner that they restore their hollowing with humanity. How peculiar that humans had found little use for humanity until they turned undead. I feel like that last sentence is more profound than I'm able to really figure out at this moment, but that's something that we should keep in mind. They're glorifying what is basically a suicide mission in order to convince undead to leave, says Twiggy. And Theomany held the Way of White is essentially a mechanism for maintaining the Gwyn status quo and to exalt Gwyn and his children and his way of things, and burying the role humanity plays or should have played. When we defeat Pinwheel, is it that we get the Rite of Kindling and that therefore no one else can get it? Or is it also true that or is it the case that more than one person, because, you know, there's the whole multiverse aspect of, interesting that we got a white Titanite chunk from that bone tower, or whatever these things are called. So is it that kindling is available to everyone who makes it past this point somehow, and that Pinwheel, as a collective or whatever, just made it past that point, and that's why they have kindling? Or, alternatively, did they go to Pinwheel's boss room before us and not realize that the kindling's already gone, and they assumed, okay, it must just be deeper in the catacombs, deeper into this tomb. Only undead can become the Dark Lord. The first undead in the Way of White was Leeroy, a high-ranking guy, and not a person Way of White would have wanted to have around, because it doesn't do well to have a high-ranking paladin as the hero character be undead in an anti-undead religion, indeed. But so if anyone has any thoughts on the whole Rite of Kindling thing, like whether there's a multiplicity of kindling rites in the same way that, you know, each player character kills each boss, or did we seal their fate by taking the Rite of Kindling ourselves, thus ensuring that they would go further into the catacombs, thinking that they had yet to come across it? So the Way of White is just a thing to find undead and expel them, and remove a potential Dark Lord. Interesting. How would I do that? I guess that works. That's one way to open an illusory wall. And this is where... Is this where the... Oh, yes, it is. There's an Ember in this room. I think that's the Ember right here. I want to see the ladder. Okay, Zuren. It's implied that Pinwheel stole the research for the rite, So, like, it's a piece of knowledge that no Way of White cleric has brought back. So this room is just a horrendous death trap. It's not so much a monster closet as it is a monster... See, this one's already trying to get us. It's not so much a monster closet as it is a monster sarcophagus. And of course we can't hit any of them up here for whatever reason. Oh, there we go. No, gosh darn it. This is not going to be easy. This Skelly is not pleased. Oh, it's our chance! Oh, we're gonna fall down, aren't we? Oh, no. Yep. I don't know how else I expected that to go. We had a bunch of humanity. So might as well put that back on for now. And we'll go back and speak with Patches in a minute. Oh, there's so many of them in here too, it's ridiculous. Let's see if we can get them moving. Although that might have been a dreadful idea, actually, now that I think about it. No, I didn't want to use that. I suppose we did. No! Okay, so we shattered our sacrifice ring, which is fine, but we preserved our souls, and that also means we don't need to go back into that treacherous sarcophagus again. We picked up the Large Divine Ember. Ember required for weapon ascension, Large Divine Ember, of secret church rites, intended for select divine blacksmiths. So it ascends +5 divine weapons, allows for reinforcement to +10, on par with the very weapons of the gods. So does anyone have any thoughts on why the heck this is here? Because obviously we find divine stuff all over the place here, because seemingly the Way of White has been sending clerics here, as everyone has been noting in the chat, for the last little while. The Way of White's been sending their clerics here for a long time. Pretty much ever since Undead had been a thing. But where we just were, that was a spot, like it was a blacksmith setup. In the same way that, as we'll see in the next episode or the episode after that, when we go to get the Divine Ember, because we're actually skipping ahead from the Divine Ember to the Large Divine Ember, there's a petrified blacksmith who looks exactly like Andre for whatever reason. Yeah, there's like a whole shop set up there. Perhaps this is where the gods would be buried when they died. In my opinion, if Nito's whole thing is death and necromancy, there's no way he wasn't elbow deep in dark soul research. Cemeteries and such are seen as sacred places, e.g. witches and other evil minions of Satan can't enter them. The Way of White have an agreement with Nito to keep sending undead clerics his way to add to his skeleton collection. That might actually not be that far off. So Patches is going to be surprised to see us, of course. Hello.
Oh, you. Well, let's just calm down. Talk about things. I did you wrong, but I didn't mean it. These temptations, they can, well, overcome me. You know what I mean, don't you? Please, forgive me. You and me, we're jolly undead outcasts, aren't we?
Yes, I suppose we are.
Oh, brilliant. A second chance. Wonderful. I had a feeling you'd understand. I did. But, if I were in your shoes... Ooh. Who knows what I'd have done. But now we're friends again. Eh?
Oh, I love that evil laugh. Are you not going to give us anything?
I did you wrong, but I didn't mean it. These temptations.
I guess not. We could at least get like a soul of a lost undead or something. Anything. Okay, this is yet again another one of those areas that generally when, at least the last like 10 or 20 times I played Dark Souls 1, I generally just ran through, used my pre-existing knowledge of the area. And here's the second bonfire in the area. Which, yeah, isn't very far from the first one, but the path there is so treacherous that I often just skip it. That, and it's not a warpable bonfire, so... Oh, stop it. If I had the sound louder, probably would have heard that Black Knight coming. But alas, I didn't. Oh, stop. It's not fair. I'm gonna find that archer, I swear. Don't divine weapons damage the skellies? Why would a divine ember be in the tomb? Well, because as we were noting, and maybe that's part of it, right? Maybe there was a blacksmith who knew that a market existed for divine weaponry in the Tomb of the Giant. In the Tomb of the Giants. So knowing that, they set up shop in one of those sarcophaguses. Was this guy like 360 no-scoping me through walls? My gosh. So yeah, so there was a, maybe a blacksmith that set up shop there, just knowing that that demand existed, that it was there. Oh, there you are. Silly, skelly archer. And yeah, met its end eventually at the hands of the very skeletons whose weaponry, who he was forging weapons to be used against. So I don't know, but that's complete speculation. I'm not really sure what other reason there would be. I think this is where the bonfire is. Or no, this is where the Black Knight was. And the Black Knight is guarding an effigy shield. Frightful occult shield defends against divine weapons and lightning. In an ill-fated plot to destroy the very gods, the followers of the occult once attempted to steal the power of Gravelord Nito, the first of the dead. Adding you to his no-scope montage, yep. Almost certainly. So the bonfire is just down there. Can't recall if we can jump there safely or not, though, so we'll avoid it for now. But that is also to say that not only were the worshippers of the Way of White congregating here, or converging here, but so too were worshippers of the occult. So imagine flesh as a cushion that protects us from Nito's magic, but bare bones can be easily controlled beyond their will, puppeting the humanity inside of their marrow. Interesting. This is another good wallpaper, or another good potential thumbnail for the episode. Just black eyes in the darkness. Okay, so we might as well light and set at the bonfire, because we have a ton of humanity to kill anyway. And we do need to reverse our hollowing in order so that we can subject ourselves to Paladin Leeroy's invasion. Don't forget to drop off the cliff for the ring. Which ring is that, and which cliff is that? Because this isn't an area I know exceptionally well. So I wouldn't want to miss it. Oh, the Silver Serpent Ring. That's a ring I usually ignored, so back behind the art. Oh, okay. Sweet D has burned off all of her fingerprints. I'm not sure that she had any to begin with, thanks to the trying to save spells, but I think this might be a bad idea. Although that still does some pretty decent damage. Okay, so I need to go back up in order to get the ring. So let's go do that. Where's this archer skelly? That was close. Yeah, you definitely don't want to get caught in that rush attack that the doggo skeletons do. So about the doggo skellies, the ones that are on all fours, my assumption there is that it's just meant to show that these are humans or giants or whatever who have been essentially reduced to their basest, most primal instincts. and that's why they crawl around on all fours. But I'm interested in hearing anyone else's perspective on this. So, do we need to jump or can we just roll? Because I don't remember this at all. Okay. I had to turn up my TV to make sure that it wasn't making that ring noise. Yep, I don't remember this at all. Holy moly. Oh, stop it. Silly bone towers, whatever you're called. They're good to farm chunks, apparently, because it's like the third one we've had drop so far. Okay. We're going to go back to the bonfire, though, because we missed a couple things, I think. Try jumping. Somehow I doubt that would work. That's not a frightening silhouette at all. Yeah, the doggo skeletons, when you kill them, they sound like they're howling. Which is unsettling, to say the least. This is like the shortest ladder in the game right here. Whoop. Okay, I guess that's it. I'm almost certainly missing things, though, just because, again, this isn't an area I know exceptionally well. A legendary weapon of the Way of White, granted to an undead paladin long ago. Once blessed with the protection of a white flame, but its power has all but faded, so that it provides only slight HP recovery. And so we talked about this on Sinclair Lore's Dark Souls podcast. I don't know that we ever heard much more about this apparent white flame. unless White Flame is literally just supposed to be like the particle effects you see when using, say, Wrath of the Gods. But I'm interested in hearing anyone's thoughts on that, because that's not something we really hear all that much about, if anything, a White Flame specifically after this game, and that item description. So that was Sanctus, and he also drops Grant, which reads, a legendary weapon of the Way of White, granted to an undead paladin long ago. This mass of iron can only be lifted by those with inhuman strength, but it is blessed, and very effective against agents of dark. So that's a hint to the fact that if you look at the auxiliary effects, it does 130 of divine damage. Maybe White Flame is divine spells. Yeah, that was what, if I recall correctly anyway, that what me and Sinclair Lore / JSF concluded. It's funny, I can't remember if it was the part of the podcast I was on or if it was the discussion that Sinclair Lore and JSF had after I left. So that's the first thing over here. And before we get to the second thing right behind me, I should note that with the whole idea of the Rite of Kindling, that the Way of White sends its clerics here to seek the Rite of Kindling. And at a certain point, Paladin Leeroy, again, this is something I talked about at great length in my appearance on Sinclair Lore's Dark Souls podcast. I'll again leave a link to that in the video description below so you can all check it out if you haven't already. So it's something I talked about at great length there, so I'm not going to recapitulate everything I said there, but essentially, at some point something switches with Paladin Leeroy in that he drops his sign to help players, seemingly, in the catacombs. But then when we proceed to the Tomb of the Giants, he invades us. And to be clear, I'm reasonably certain that happens whether or not you summon him, but the fact remains that he does drop his summon sign for players. And then somewhere that switches. Yeah, that is the suggestion I've heard in the past, that he was running out of humanity, so he desperately needed humanity, so he started invading. But him invading would be consistent with my suggestion from earlier that when we got the Rite of Kindling, it's a zero-sum game in that, not everyone can have the Rite of Kindling. We took it, so when they reached Pinwheel, they didn't find it and realized, you know what, maybe we should just proceed further into the tomb. It's probably in there. He helps you defeat the guy who stole Kindling from Nito, but attacks you when you move forward to kill Nito. He protects Nito. So, yeah, it could... so Theomeni says this, that he's protecting Nito, so it could go either way, I think. Falcafoli says maybe he still wanted to accomplish his mission and didn't want to hollow at any cost. Hunterm says, yeah, either Leeroy's gone hollow or the player has gone too deep, and the church is protecting Nito. Based on the suggestion from earlier that the church and Nito have an arrangement of sorts, where the church sends Nito his undead. The church sends Nito its undead, so that Nito can add to their skeleton collection, skelly collection, I guess. But, with all that said, it is also possible that in being unable to find the Rite of Kindling, and just being frustrated and eventually going hollow, Paladin Leeroy decides, screw it, I'll just start invading other players. I'll show them. Normally between Nito and the skeletons, there's no trouble, but just in case, there's Leeroy. Or it could be that the Way of White wants absolutely no survivors. That's another possibility. Paladin Leeroy when you absolutely positively want to leave no undead existing except no substitutes. So that's all very, very interesting. The other thing I wanted to talk about here is that we are very near the bedrock of the world, so to speak. And you can see that the land of Lordran above us is being supported by countless Archtrees. And it's interesting to me that, in retrospect, looking back at Bloodborne and the Hunter's Dream, and how in the Hunter's Dream, when in the early episodes of Let's Talk Lore before the DLC, just seeing all of the pillars in the Hunter's Dream and trying to tease out what that might mean, and thinking back to this scene right here and imagining that maybe the pillars are holding up the world. But at the time, there was really no evidence for that until we got the DLC, and we realized that the way the layers of the nightmare or the dreamlands work are such that you can look down and see what's below you, but you can't look up and see what's above you. And so, again, it is very intriguing that it wasn't long after they finished working on the DLC for Dark Souls 1 that they started working on Bloodborne. And, you know, we have a very, very similar scene here. So yeah, this is beautiful, but something that does bear mentioning is the fact that the world doesn't fit together as well as it's made to appear that it fits together. And at the beginning of each episode in this playthrough, we've been looking at a map of the world that was created by an amazing artist named Tettix, Tettix. As that person noted when they first posted that map of Lordran to Reddit, at least as best as I can recall, it was originally inspired by the world design of Dark Souls 1 and how vertical everything is. But it was also noted by that same person that they had to take a lot of liberties in putting together that map in order so that it would appear much like it is when you were going through the game, that everything is connected when really it isn't. And this is one spot where, at least according to the people who have done the work of loading up the map viewer and seeing how everything in the actual game, in the nuts and bolts of the game, how everything is supposed to fit together. And the Archtrees being here, at least based on my recollection of what those people found, doesn't really make any sense. But it's interesting and beautiful nevertheless. So, moving on. And it's certainly a wonderful and powerful contrast that you have this bright mist here that goes all the way off into the distance. And then you have blackness of the Tomb of the Giants. And someone doing the beckon gesture over there. Leeroy's Dark Souls Brador, maybe. Notice how those aren't reflections in the water. That's a layer of fog because Ash Lake is further down. Yeah. Well, and I don't even think this is implied to be Ash Lake. Because it doesn't look anything like it. It looks like it's just another spot where there's ash and archtrees and whatnot. And also, okay, one last thing. That in the distance, for a split second, I was thinking that these looked like the fissure that we see in Things Betwixt in Dark Souls 2. But when you look at this one over here, it's pretty clear that that's supposed to just be the daylight from above seeping through a crack in the foundations of the Archtrees. Or the roots of the Archtrees, I guess. But like these roots... No, these are the branches of the Archtrees. The roots are near the bottom. But I was going to say, it looks almost like... It's like a palindrome tree with like... roots on the top and the bottom. So this is a pretty brutal trap if you don't see it coming. In that the bone towers spawn both in front of you and behind you. And that other skeleton is preparing to kick us off the cliff. There he goes. He was a little bit late. A little bit late there, friend, and then he was so startled by the fact that we outsmarted him that he just jumped to his death. Oh my gosh. Oh, the AI in this game, I'll never tire of it. And so this is something that's done throughout the game, more so in this game than I think in really all of the others. The fact that you'll fight a boss, and then later in the game, the boss becomes just a generic enemy type. Or generic enemy. No, crud. So there are also these baby... The community, as best as I can recall, has always referred to these skeletons as baby skeletons. And perhaps a more apt way of referring to them, more accurate, is infant skeletons? Worthy of note, perhaps, that they do poison damage, and they drop humanity. At least I believe they drop humanity. I've never really spent any time farming them, because A, they frighten me, B, I'm pretty sure they respawn immediately, and C, there are much better places to farm. So there you can see the poison buildup. Is this Nito's preschool for murderous infants, or they do just want hugs? So does anyone have any thoughts on the infant skeletons? We also have all of these skeletons here that are... again, seemingly people from the Way of White who have taken a pilgrimage here for one reason or another. My thought is they're adorable. And they respawn infinitely, which I think is meant to suggest that Nito is sort of their necromancer, as with the skeletons in the boss room. But I'm pretty sure you can continue farming them even after you've killed Nito. Nito's clearly running a racket here. Those tiny skeletons are not children. Nito pays them a cut to scam the government out of those big paying orphanage contracts. So sort of like Sweet D did after she agreed to be a surrogate for a wealthy couple. She started claiming little Barnabas Reynolds as a dependent. Don't you get twin humanities off of female corpses? Does it suggest that the women sent to seek kindling were pregnant? I know that that's something that ENB suggested in the past, that twin humanities could be a female... that when you find twin humanity on a corpse, it suggests that it could be a female... Oh my god, it's a floating skull. With eyeballs? Or those teeth? That when you find a corpse containing twin humanity... And this might have been egged on by the fact that one of them, I think, had a female corpse model or something. That it's, you know, perhaps a woman who's pregnant. But I would think that in the design of the twin humanities, and I don't have any at this moment, but in the design of it, it shows two equally sized humanity sprites. Oh, the face is pointed towards the ground. Oh! Yeah, you're right. Oh my god. Maybe this should be the thumbnail of the episode. Because I don't know what I'm going to use for the thumbnail yet. But yeah, I would think that if it was a pregnant woman, if the twin humanities were supposed to be a pregnant woman, then wouldn't one of the humanity sprites be smaller than the others? I don't know. I think it's a bit inconsistent. Some of the twin humanities come from non-female corpses. And what's more is that I'm reasonably certain anyway that the small humanity sprites in the Chasm of the Abyss drop twin humanities. So I don't know that there's necessarily any rhyme or reason to it. So again, we have more of these skeletons here. That are just sort of hanging out. And I don't know what the point of this is here. Like, what is the point of this? Other than it's meant to look scary and spooky. I'm not entirely sure. Could be a simple warning system so that they hear you coming because you're smashing all the trees, maybe? Yeah, maybe. I was gonna say, or it's meant to indicate that, like, it's been there for a while and no one has been past this point. But then, what is the point? Like, it's not natural growth, A, and B, why does it have all of this stuff tied to it? Unless this was Gale coming back in time, like way back in time, and trying to work on his knot technique so that he could prepare to lead us through the Ring City. I don't know. Gale with his infinite red scarf. It's like that game, Unraveled. Because you see there's more of it here. Alright, I don't know how we're going to approach this. We should equip Blooming Purples, because Nito can inflict Toxic on us. Alright. Well, we'll figure it out as we go. So one way to approach this fight is to not move after you drop in. Because the more you move, the greater number of respawning skeletons that Nito raises. Or rather, the skeletons are raised to chase you. That was close. Oh no, we're dead. That attack is very helpful in clearing the ads. I'm not sure if he realizes that. So really, that's not an exceptionally difficult or interesting boss fight, as far as I'm concerned. And the reason for that, I think, is just that the mechanics of the fight really center around the adds. That is, the additional enemies that, again, if you walk around, you raise more of them. They rise up to follow you. And really, the only challenge to the boss fight is managing the adds in addition to Nito. So I think it would have been nice for them to have, you know, come up with some sort of way of making the fight mechanically interesting beyond that aspect of it. Because another approach you can take is that if you do want to clear out the adds and fight Nito, then you could just equip a divine weapon. We could have used that to kill the skeletons such that they don't respawn, and then we could have focused on fighting Gwyn. But, yeah. So whose coffin is next to Nito's? Yeah, it's a really tiny coffin by comparison. And I think that's the only coffin in here. It's a boo, which is kind of strange. Because the rest of this is just stalactites or stalagmites, one of the two. Every single time I raise that, or I mention that term, I think to myself, why haven't you looked up the difference between them yet? I think one is meant to be that it's coming down from the roof, and one is that it's protruding from the ground. It could be pinwheels, I guess, but I don't really think pinwheel's all that important. Because again, we fight Pinwheel, but then there's all those pinwheels outside of the boss room as well. So I don't know. But again, here's the Gravelord sarcophagus, which has some leftover skellies that I guess fell off of Nito. And as we learned in the previous episode, if we were in the Gravelord Covenant, we would have basically shut the Covenant off to ourselves. So yeah, you didn't really miss anything special, Vodka Foley. I do think it's a nice boss room, but an underdeveloped boss fight, I think. So as I mentioned in either the previous episode or the episode prior to that, I'm aware that we've got a lot of people here at Firelink that we need to speak with at some point or another. But we're going to leave a lot of this stuff for now and just speak to a couple of NPCs before we call it an episode. Because there are 3 people that we need to speak with about the things that just happened in the Tomb of the Giants. And here's our first. Hi, friend?
Oh, we meet again. How many of you are there? You've come at the perfect time. I'm done with the looting. I'm a humble merchant now, and wondrous treasures have I, at a special price for you. There you are. Have a nice look at them. Oh, relax. No more funny business out of me, my friend.
So when he says, how many of you are there? Is he talking about, again, is FromSoft invoking the multiverse understanding of the game? We can also learn gesture from him. Prostration. Which I'm going to assume it means to beg for forgiveness. It means the action of lying stretched out on the ground, the state of being extremely weak or subservient, extreme physical weakness or emotional exhaustion. Not so much begging for forgiveness, but like trying to illustrate that he's not a threat. A lot of people tootling around at Firelink. Stands to reason that more of them have at least come to see who this new guy is than you. Okay. Yeah, sure, fair enough. And that's consistent with the fact that had we allowed Lautrec to remain alive, he would have been able to give us the scoop on Petrus. So suggesting that in spite of the fact that when the player character is there, everyone just remains where they are. They don't move. They're stationary. That, as Shinobi just suggested in the chat, they do, at least according to those interactions, they do speak with each other. And they are aware of the presence of one another. And that is repeated throughout both of the other Dark Souls games as well.
Yeah. Have you met that sunbathing Solaire? Believe me on this one, my love. He's a complete idiot. But he happens to be an awfully strong idiot. So just nod your head and keep him on your side.
See, that I find interesting. Because isn't Solaire very obviously a cleric? That's one aspect of what I find interesting about this. And the other aspect is that, as we just discussed, that illustrates the fact that the NPCs in this world are aware of one another. It's that even though mechanically the player character is the agent who binds all of these people together and who drives the action in all of their personal stories. Yeah, well, he's not associated with any group, but you know, he does carry around a talisman, and he casts miracles. Okay, yeah, no, all fair points, everyone. All very fair points. That he's not... So what Patches is upset about is more specifically the very devoted type of cleric, a religious cleric, as opposed to a utility cleric. Well, he is in a search for his own personal son, and he's on a very personal quest, but I don't know that I would say Solaire is individualistic, because... you know, he is in a covenant that's all about helping other people and assisting others. And he the first time the player character meets him, he's very upfront in saying that we should help one another. Paladin might be a better term for Solaire's archetype, but he's definitely got religious motivations, becoming like Gwyn. Can someone verify for me, because I've never done a cleric build in this game, but when you're a cleric, I'm going to assume he doesn't attack you on sight, that he instead asks you whether you're a cleric and gives you a choice as to whether or not you want to identify as one. And so he's really concerned with the people who want to identify as clerics, I guess. I think Solaire's quest is more about personal meaning, faith in himself and his purpose. Yeah, he's spiritual, but not religious. All very well said, I think, everyone. Is Patches individualistic? Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Patches is like as close as you can get to the embodiment of neoliberalism in the Souls games, in that, you know, he says, I get these urges, you know, running a small business and all. Like, that's basically capitalism. That it's tied to a certain degree with exploiting people for one's own personal gain, at least under specific forms of capitalism. A self-aware classical liberal, yeah, maybe. Well, because again, and you know, not to put too fine a point on it, but look at... These are all things he finds. Patches is like the worst kind of eBay reseller. Like, he has a deal with the person at the flea market or whatever, who sells games there, that, oh, if they have games, they'll call him first, and so he shows up before. He has his own booth where he sells things, and he shows up and just buys up all of the games that are actually valuable, but people don't know. And then he sells them at insane prices. Either that, or he murders people and steals their video games, so I don't know. Maybe that's not a very good analogy after all. But he does also have the mask of the father, and the mother and the child. And the description is more or less all the same, which is one of the three masks of the Pinwheel, the necromancer who stole the power of the Gravelord and reigns over the catacombs. So again, the power of the Gravelord, that being the Rite of Kindling, so suggesting again that because we defeated Pinwheel, these clerics from the Way of White, they proceeded further into the tomb because they didn't know that we had already got Kindling. And he also has a cleric set, which, yeah, is presumably the armor set of either Vince and Nico, or Vince or Nico, or other clerics that he's killed at one point or another.
Wait, have you met Petrus? That self-proclaimed cleric? Believe me on this one, my love. The man is scum. Don't you be fooled by his claims to do good. They're all the same, those rotten clerics.
So, again... he's not wrong. He's not, at least not about the first part. About Patches being, or about Petrus being scum. I suppose Petrus is... that it takes scum to know scum, because Patches is, you know, pretty much scum. And that's the thing. We have to talk about Patches in greater depth at a later date, because the Ring City complicates things a little bit, in a way that I really enjoy. And so Patches is going, we're going to have, I won't say an entire episode on Patches, but we're going to have a very, very lengthy segment on Patches when we get around to it in Let's Talk Lore. Because I have a lot of mixed feelings about Patches.
Oi, have you met Lautrec the Embraced? Believe me on this one, my love. He's completely mad. He wouldn't think twice about cutting somebody down. So watch out for him. Especially if you've humanity to spare.
Something else that Twiggy mentioned in the chat. I didn't mean to suggest that Patches is correct when he says they're all the same. I don't think that he was right about that. But...
I'm done with the looting. I'm a humble merchant now. And wondrous treasures have I, at a special price for you.
A special price? Thank you, Patches.
What? Nothing appeals to you? Well, you must have poor taste.
Hi, not friend. Didn't mean to do that. Nor that. Okay. Let's just talk to him.
Ah. Oh, you. Have you seen Milady? Oh, blast, where might she be? And would she be safe?
I saw her in the Tomb of the Giants, friend. Hey, weren't you in the Tomb of the Giants just a short time ago? He's got places to go, everyone. Contented Petrus. Going for a walk. Or using the treadmill. Yep, working out. Working out. Yep. The unfortunate thing is that he returns to the spot where he once was if you kick him out of the way, and I learned that when I was trying to kick him off the ledge in an earlier playthrough.
Oh, I'm sorry. Miracles, was it? Sometimes I lose myself. Pay me no mind.
So yeah, he has no interest in talking to us, really, beyond being able to sell us spells. Yeah, you're sure doing a fine job looking for her, Petrus. Yep. So something that has been noted before, I don't recall exactly where, but it's perhaps not a coincidence that we find a channeler here early in the game, a single spawn channeler, which suggests that it's a specific character, and that we find the channeler looking sort of down here. And that later, when Rhea's freed, she comes here. Although it is also possible that the channeler is looking at this corpse, which contains the soul of a firekeeper. But I don't know. Because, again, she's not here till later in the game. So the only circumstance, the only situation in which you would find the channeler actually stalking her, so to speak, is if you don't kill the channeler, leave the channeler alive, and then go through her whole quest line, and then the channeler would be here looking at her. Because it's an open question as to how she gets to the Duke's Archives, a Duke's Archive prison. Something to note, but yeah, that's a thing.
Hello. I will never forget what you did. I am deeply indebted, for it was not within my power to save Vince or Nico. I cannot thank you enough. In case you have not heard, I am Rhea of Thorolund. I only wish there was some way I could help you, but I am inexperienced and I only know the art of miracles. If that could be of any help, speak to me again.
Yeah, maybe Vodka Foley and Undersea Ellie. That's about as reasonable a suggestion I've heard in this instance, in this case.
Would a miracle be of any help to you? I would be most pleased if that was so. And may we discuss miracles then?
So we learn from her the prayer gesture, which, if you're a cleric, you already have that, so I guess you don't learn anything. She has... how many divine blessings? Just one for 1,000 souls. Wrath of the Gods. Primal form of force, create powerful shockwave. Wrath of the Gods was an epic tale that tattered over time and devolved into the modern force. This primal form of force emits a shockwave that also inflicts damage. I understood the situation before we clear this area and kill the channeler and the Berenike single spawn is that they were having like, oh... yeah, maybe. Because yeah, there is a Berenike knight standing here. Seath was maybe trying to figure out how to manufacture the Firekeepers, or he did figure it out, and that's why we can make them by Dark Souls 3. The Picasses are referred to as mistakes. Well, that, and we find a Firekeeper soul in the cell where what's-his-face is being held. Big Hat Logan.
Vince and Nico were fooled by a lout named Patches and turned into hollows. My prayers did them no good. It is my ignorance, my frailty that has sealed their fates. Perhaps Petrus realized my weakness all along, and thus made the decision to abandon me. I can hardly blame him now.
I can blame him, because that's freaking awful.
Then be safe. Farewell, Rhea Nox.
Oh, I'm sorry. Miracles, was it? Sometimes I lose myself. Pay me no mind.
So again, if we leave him here, as was noted for me in the chat in the previous episode or the episode prior to it, or in the previous live stream, I should say, if you leave Rhea up in the Undead Parish and you don't kill her after a couple of boss fights, he will kill her. So he drops 2 humanity, but you'd be mistaken for thinking that he had any humanity himself. Okay, well that's going to do it for this episode, because screw Petrus. Thank you all very, very much for joining us, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.